us. Brother Charlie came into Gyan in 1975 in UK. He's one of the first brother to emerge and sustained and nurtured by Dadi Janki for many years in his spiritual childhood, and by many seniors, Didi Manmoni, Dadi Prakashmani. He's currently the national coordinator for Brahma Kumaris in Australia, and he's also being Didi Nirmala's right hand for the regional coordinator of Asia. My personal experience with him is that he's very, very light-hearted and very easy-natured. He's also like an elder brother with whom you can share anything from your heart. He's in a male costume though, but he's like a mother, very caring. He can do any open heart surgery. What I mean is that he holds the key to everyone's heart, just like Bab Dada. Over to you, brother. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. So first of all, I should thank Rajesh for his extraordinary welcome. And it's really lovely to be in this beautiful gathering. I arrived in Shantivan. I've been down there 4 or 5 days, and I did come up the other day, but this is the first time really to see everybody and connect with everybody. And I wonder, have you heard that song before that we heard? You've heard it before? Because it's a sister in Melbourne who sang it, and she always does her recording at 4 a.m. in the morning. She does all her singing and recording, and somehow you can feel the vibration, can't you? So last night we heard a wonderful Murli from 2012, and I'm sure Sister Mohini was here this morning and Bridge Mohan Bai, and they have shared something. So many things touched me, but I think when Baba said he's reminding us it's the time of suddenly, Baba's giving a warning. It sort of hit me quite strongly. I don't know why, because I've heard it so many times before. But I remember when I first heard Baba say that, I was imagining there would be upheavals in the world. And there are. There's so much upheaval, increasing upheaval. But after a while I began to think, he's also referring the suddenlies of upheaval in us too. Because it's the final time, it's the time of settlement, and somehow the drama is triggering unfinished business in all of us. And I like to think about that, not to overreact when a suddenly happens inside. A personality, a situation just triggers something that's unfinished within me. But also I began to think it's not only suddenly the accounts in the world, suddenly the accounts in me, but it seems like suddenly we can really take a high jump. I don't know, how do you feel about that? I really feel we're at a time that everything's moving fast. The suddenlies in the world, the suddenlies in us, but also I think if I really put my mind to it, that I can really move forward very, very fast at the moment. And I really love our theme for this year. Do you like the theme? I really love it. Because to me, the more I go on in my journey with Baba, this is what it's about to me. And this is what makes this life so incredibly special. And just living in limitless love with Baba. And over recent years, I found that if I'm sort of forcing myself, pushing myself, pressuring myself, I feel I'm still doing devotion. The bhakti sanskaras are still moving. I really deeply feel that Brahma Baba's way was just to fall so deeply in love with Shiv Baba. To me, this is what Raj Yoga is ultimately about. The true method is to really engage with the most lovable soul of all, Shiv Baba. And when I naturally fall in love with Shiv Baba, I naturally remember. I don't have to think I should, I must, or I've been forgetting. It's a natural consequence of someone you really feel in love with and that incredible sense of belonging. And when I naturally remember, I naturally transform. It's a natural product when the seed is that true love. Everything happens naturally. And one of the incredible transformations, I think, is this letting go of my dependent nature, which all of us have acquired for 63 births. Birth after birth, just become more and more and more dependent. And really to let go that dependence is not an easy thing, but to me the method is the more I'm in love, almost automatically that sort of spider web of dependence seems to reduce. And I notice we have some of our Russian brothers and sisters here, and I remember reading something of Leo Tolstoy, the Russian philosopher. And he said that the greatest motivation in the human spirit is to be free. And in a way, I would agree. I think Baba often encourages us to just step into that place of complete freedom, to feel liberated, to feel, lift the burden and lift the bondages in the soul. Such an incredible feeling when you feel absolutely the free spirit. But there was a French philosopher who actually stayed in Global Retreat Centre in Oxford. I read once that he lived there. And his name was Rousseau. And he said that everywhere man is born free, but everywhere he's found in chains. Now we know those chains are my karmic story. But it's like, I think, just as the motivation in the human spirit is to feel peace, it's also to be absolutely liberated and, unencumbered in that way too. And yet it seems that we just create these mental, emotional, and physical bondages. We create them ourselves. And then we spend my life fighting them. We create them. And then we spend a lot of time, mental energy, trying to fight these bondages and these feelings which I've created within myself. And sometimes I really love to reflect on the whole journey of the soul, from the beginning of the cycle. And just imagine, the soul remember how Baba had the vision of the deity souls just coming and landing in the forehead, just sitting so lightly in the forehead. I had a body, I had a family, I had roles, I had responsibilities, I had possessions, but I was absolutely liberated and free. No dependence whatsoever. It's incredible, and Baba uses this language, Jivan Mukt. I'm in a body, I'm in relationship, but I feel completely and utterly free within that. An incredible state, and Baba really encourages us, and sometimes I feel that's the state of bliss in one way, where you're just in this incredible state where you don't feel heavy about anything at all. And yet when we come to the copper edge and we look outside myself, whatever I desire begins to influence me. The more I desire, the more I'm influenced. The more I become dependent, I'm influenced. The law says, really, the more I become dependent on my body, on people, on possessions, whatever, they will affect me. And when you look at the end of the cycle, we started these incredibly free spirits, and by the end of the cycle, I just feel completely like a spider in a web, or like the insect in the web. So many dependencies holding me down. I want to be free, but they're my own creation. It's my own creation which I'm trying to escape from. And sometimes I do hold that image of the insect in the web, or that we've created this amazing network of I and my in myself. At the end of the cycle, I've collected all this dependence in multi-layers within me. And this dependence, in a sense, why did I create it? Because it gives me temporary security. It gives me temporary support. And in one way, to me, dependence is identifying and taking support from anything temporary. Any temporary relationship, temporary role, temporary responsibility. When I take support, and it does give me support, and that's why I engage with it. But the offset is that I feel burdened, and I feel heavy, and I feel weighed down. I've lost my freedom. That incredible liberated feeling of being that free soul is lost. And I just feel completely controlled, the insect in the spider web. And, these layers of I and my that are sort of layered in the soul, there's just so many of them. Possessions, that's probably one of the things which is not so difficult for most of us. But I remember the story we were told when I first came in Gyan, that it's a myth in India, I think, about Alexander the Great. You may have heard it, that he conquered so much of the so-called known world. That's what they called it in those days. And yet when he died, he said, in my coffin, have my hands outside my coffin. Because even though he acquired so much in his life, he died empty-handed like everyone. And so, we become very dependent on material things. But actually on relationships, it's, when you think, as we became more and more insecure, as we became more and more fearful of loss, etc., I created this dependence on others. And I remember actually the sister who spoke that commentary, sang that song. She gave a commentary once, and in Australia, and she had us stand in front of this huge mansion, a huge house, which had 84 rooms. I'm sure you can get where I'm going to. And we went in the front door, and we went into the first room. She took us in, imagining she was giving a commentary. And in that room was the clothes of a whole lifetime, all the clothes I've worn in a whole lifetime. And on the mantelpiece were all the photos of grandparents, parents, siblings, brothers and sisters, children, grandchildren, people. The whole network of a whole lifetime. And on the wall were all the achievements, what I've done, what I've achieved, my education. And, it's huge, isn't it? All the things that I connect with in a life. And then we leave it. She took us out and she took us into another room. The same thing, all the clothes of a life, all the different photographs, and all the achievements. And you start to see, how deep all the layering is of dependence that we've collected. Even another layer, roles, responsibilities, etc. How deep is that? My whole sense of identity for half a cycle's been more around what I do than who I am. It's been so important to me. It's been the basis of self-respect, even though it was temporary. Even dependence on thinking, ideas and opinions. I don't know about you, but I find today people are so attached to my opinion or my thinking or my perception of reality. It seems to be much, stronger than ever. And so even my virtues and my qualities, you just think what we've collected in the second half of the cycle. I created all that dependence, that I and my, that's sitting in layers in the soul. I've sustained all that dependence, and I hold on to it in a way because it's given me a sense of who I am. And then Baba comes along, and what does Baba say? Children, let it all go. We say, Baba, can I keep just a little bit? Nope. Just let the whole thing go. It's incredible when you think about it. And yet that's the journey all of us are on. Just think, I began with nothing. Not even really the awareness of my body, let alone a relationship. At the end, I've got hundreds and thousands of layers of dependence. And then Baba says, children, to free yourself, this is the journey that I'm taking you on, this incredible process of stepping back from all those limited identities, I's and my's, and reconnecting with Baba. And I've thought so much in my Brahman journey how to conquer attachment. And I came to the conclusion, you can't. That sounds a bit controversial. I think you can only replace it. I really think, and I think that's the more that relationship with Baba is absolutely real, it's loving. I have this absolute security, and that's the right word, in my relationship with Shiv Baba. Almost automatically, the layers I've collected start to have less and less power over me. And I think this is Baba's way. Baba's way is not to really sort of take one form of dependence and try to work through it. I think Baba wants to chop the tree down at the roots rather than picking off this leaf of dependence, that leaf, but really try to chop the tree off at the root. And it's really about this deep, deep relationship of love, belonging, connectedness that is so absolutely real. And this journey, this amazing journey we're on, I feel we go from a gross dependence to a subtle one to even a refined form until the soul really becomes free. And sometimes when I think about the life of Brahma Baba, when you think in 32 years from being a married man with a business, he became a full angel. He let go every single thread of I and my. There is no greater achievement of a human soul than what he did. Because I feel when we come into Gyan, it's like we go the step from body conscious to Brahman. It's a huge step. We all know we adopt a Brahman lifestyle. We meet Baba and automatically we start to change and transform. And I have a new identity. And so I begin this process of becoming more independent, freeing myself. But it's sort of a gross, I would call it a gross dependence we begin to let go on possessions, maybe on the culture of my birth, on the opinions of society, the way I dress, the way I look, all that sort of stuff. But as we move into this life with Baba, this journey of our life with Baba, I think the second step is from Brahman to serviceable soul. And that's a big step too. And most of us have taken that step where we establish myself and my relationship with Baba, and then Baba says, children, like last night, become the world benefactor. We have to change the whole world. And I put up my hand and I say, Baba, I want to help you with a pure heart, with a pure intention. And yet without really realizing it, I think we've let go the gross dependence of the world, but we rebuild a subtle dependence within my Brahman journey. Because I haven't really changed the I and my, I've just reformed them in a more subtle way within my Brahman life. So I start to build my sense of identity around being a Brahman, the Brahman principles, my role, my position, and maybe even my relationships in the Brahman family. So it was almost like I've transferred the old and gross dependence and I rebuild it subtly in my Brahman life. And when I create that again, I create the I's and my's within the Brahman life, and then I sustain it. And then when they're threatened, because life will threaten what I'm dependent on, and that's what fear is, fear of losing what I'm dependent on. You know, that's when I become very protective of, this is my area, this is my part, all this sort of stuff, very protective, and I'll even fight to protect what is sort of a part of my sense of self within my Brahman journey. And I used to think this shouldn't happen, but I've begun to feel this is just a part of this journey with Baba. This will happen. And yet, and when this happens, it flushes out a whole set of stuff within me that has to flush out. You know, competitiveness and defensiveness, you know, this is my thing, and maybe jealousy and my way and your way, and a whole lot of behaviors just will flush out because I still have this subtle my area, your area, my way, your way, I'm right, you're wrong, etc. All that sort of thinking. And yet, as I was saying, I really feel that it has to happen. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not going backwards. It's just a part of this journey of transformation. And I think we become, I'm a Brahman, I love Baba, I have faith in Baba, I'm even dedicated in service. But sometimes I don't feel that happy. I'm not really as happy as I feel I should be, because I've rebuilt my structure of I and my within my Brahman journey. And I remember once Baba said there's two small words that stop me from becoming an angel, a full angel. And that is I and my. This network is massive. It's embedded in the sanskaras, in the soul. And in a way, when Baba talks about dying alive, this is the whole process of dying to that which I've collected, my ego and my dependence, which I've collected in this amazing journey. I let go the gross form, even I build the subtle form, and even Baba says that we have to let go that as well. And this is really the journey from serviceable soul to the angel. And sometimes I feel many of us in the Brahman family, we've spent 10, 20, 30, 40, nearly 50 years dedicated in Baba's task, but sometimes feel we're held back a bit because all these subtle strings. And I remember once in the renunciation maulis, that amazing set of maulis which I periodically reread, because to me, that's what really helped me understand what this life was about. Baba was talking about the children who renounce body consciousness and the children who really become soul conscious. And yet he talked about the golden chains. And the golden chains were sort of being a little bit dependent on the image I've built. I'm a good teacher, you know. People love me. I have these virtues, you know, this sort of... And even Baba said, even we have to let go that layer too, so that it's almost like this life is, we started with nothing, we collected everything, I have to go back to where I started. And the more I let go and the more I free myself, that sort of sense of being in this world and not influenced by this world, the sense of being the angel, really begins to, you know, manifest within me. What an incredible journey, because, you know, sometimes I think there's even refined forms of dependence too. And, you know, there's so many layers in the soul. And one of the great dependencies I've found personally And the really deep work of this life, the really deep work on myself is dependence on certain beliefs about myself. These are so strong. You come into Gyan, you have such a strong impression of who I am, this perception of me. And even though I practice to be a soul, often that remains, the perception or the belief that I'm not really lovable, that people won't really love me. Sometimes that belief is so strong, even when people offer me love, I can't really feel it to the level that I feel I would like to. I remember one soul telling me once that they felt that, and such a sweet person, but just felt that really people, because the vision on the self was just so limited, negative, people won't love me. And so that belief, the attachment to this perception of myself, is a huge block to freeing myself. Even, I would say, one of the most powerful beliefs that I'm sort of dependent on is that I'm not worthy. I am not worthy. And to me, that belief is the inheritance of bhakti, the inheritance of devotion. The inheritance from Baba, from Gyan, is I am worthy. And this, once again, this unworthiness is so deep. I sometimes feel when we sit to remember Baba, and most of us at different points in our journey, we recognize Baba deeply, we have that love and faith, but I still feel a bit distant. There's that sort of distance. I feel it's this attachment, this dependence on this habit of not being worthy. And the image I often have is that for 63 births, every year, every week, every day, we've gone into all these religious places, God is so great, you're so pure, you're so high, you're so elevated, and I'm so low, I'm so impure, I'm so this, this. And when I've done this year after year, life after life, day after day, it's created this incredible block to my connection with Baba. And to really have the courage to let go identifying with my old part, my old self. Even though I'm a Brahman, I'm still, my head is still in the past, in my past story, that I'm not worthy enough really to be loved by God, this pure love. And to me, sometimes I think this is knowledge, to observe, what is it that's blocking this connection. It's this feeling of unworthiness, I would say. And allow Baba to love me. Because this sort of identification or this dependence on this feeling can be so strong. Or even another belief about the self, that I'm not good enough. I mean, how strong is that? Even when, how sometimes you can do something so many times, and you can do it, and yet sometimes still you fear the outcome, whether I will be good enough. And this sort of, it's such a strong feeling, and this sort of sense that I'm just not worthy and I'm not good enough. And it's, this deep, deep feeling inside of me. I remember in Sydney once, there was a person who came who worked with a world-famous comedian who used to tour the world. And she was telling me she was like the stage manager. Everyone knows this person. He was so clever. And so when he did a show, he'd get encore after encore after encore because he was so good. But she said every night he would walk into the wings after 10 encores. He would say, was I good enough? Did they like me? It's amazing, isn't it? How deep is this sense of sort of self-doubt, this attachment, this dependence on this sense of inferiority or not being good enough? Because it is like a dependence on the old image of the self. And Baba's giving us a new image of who I am. Even I've thought sometimes over the years that almost all of us walk into this life with a sense, I'm a victim. It's a part of a body-conscious mentality or mindset. We hold this position, I'm a victim. And sometimes I think I have this incredible sort of dependence in a way, or attachment to that position. I feel a victim of people's decisions. I feel manipulated by situations. And I keep positioning myself as a victim in life. And it's almost like my dependent position, that's wherever I go, whoever I'm with, I sort of feel a bit victimized by circumstances, behaviors, opinions, decisions, a whole lot of factors. And when I think of Baba and the vision on the soul, there's 4 visions I often feel on the soul that all of us have on us. One is the vision of the world. And the vision of the world will judge and label me in a millisecond. We've all experienced that. They'll just judge and label you according to all your bodily labels. We've all experienced that. There's the vision of others. And I think for most of us, there is the vision of love sometimes, but often that vision, that drishti, the energy in the drishti has been critical, has been negative. Because people don't have self-respect. How can they really have that vision of sustained love and respect? So we're all used to often critical vision or negative drishti from others. The third is the vision on myself. To me, this is the main obstacle in this journey. Often Brahmins live with others and someone doesn't like me, someone rejects me, someone dislikes me, and we just are so hurt by that. It's a really deep thing to feel rejected. And yet I think it's nothing compared to my own vision on myself. Sometimes, the drishti on myself is so negative and so critical in that way. Just really, really a difficult vision. And this is where I think that when we step out of that vision, and that vision on myself that I'm a victim, I'm attached often to this perception of myself. I hold on to it, even well into Brahman life after many years. In the center situations, stuff, I position myself. And then the 4th vision is Baba's vision. And I think it's just amazing. Baba's drishti, he sees the original me. I see the conditioned me with all my I and my network. And sometimes I think, when Avyak Bapdada meets us, every time, I think so much of what Baba's trying to do is to change our feelings about ourselves and feel belonging with Baba. Because really this life is to step out of the attachment or the dependence on this limited vision on myself and step into the unlimited vision of Baba. When I used to meet Baba personally, when you sit in front of Baba, it was amazing, the feeling of how Baba was seeing me as just such an elevated being. And I had such a clear awareness. I was seeing myself here. Baba was seeing me here. And in a way, this life is stepping out of the attachment, the dependence on this vision and accepting the vision of God. Because whose vision is real? It's Baba's vision. And so even this feeling of being a victim, what do victims do? What's the part of they blame? They blame. If I'm blaming, no, I have a sense that I'm a victim in life. Blaming somebody, blaming whatever it may be. And really, when you go deep, deep, deep into truth, God's truth about the law of karma, no one is a victim, really. All the karmic accounts at the moment of the past. Of course, in lifetimes, people suffer and we will support them, but the truth is, ultimately, none of us are victims. So sometimes that dependence on that position, so wherever I am, I'm complaining, why are they like this, they're always like this this decision, feeling that life is almost against me. Baba wants us to free ourselves from that. Even, and I'm not sure the right language, almost like a dependence on being rejected in a sense. I remember once I was a part of a panel, an interfaith panel, and there was a Buddhist monk who was speaking, and it was about non-violence, and everyone was sharing thoughts about non-violence. Baba talks a lot about non-violence. And we began to discuss, where does it begin? Where does this violence, look at our world, what an incredibly violent world. And we came to the conclusion it begins with the relationship with me. When I have violent thoughts against myself, you're no good, you're hopeless. And probably the most violent thought is to reject, put myself down, push myself away, say that you have no value, is a sort of, such a violence against the self. And I think that this, once again, this habit, when we lose self-respect, which we all do by the end of the cycle, it's a part of the journey, it distorts my perception. It's like I've got a filter over my thinking, and every situation, I'm distorting that situation. And because my lack of self-respect is low, if someone comes and says something to me, I feel they're rejecting me, or they're putting me down, or they don't like me. But actually, maybe that can happen, but often it's the distortion in my own thinking. Because I'm attached to this feeling that maybe people will not love me, accept me, they'll reject me. So that's the way I'm reading life, I'm reading situations. And I think even these sorts of things, Baba builds our self-respect, and that self-respect in a sense is freeing me from all this wrong perception, misreading people's intentions. Sometimes even people come with good intentions, but because of my lack of self-worth, lack of self-respect, I keep misreading them. Even dependence on being right. Do you remember, I am right? You should know that the way I think and what I do is right. Because I can remember even Baba, about maybe 15, 20 years ago, he used to say, how is ego manifesting in the Brahman world? And Baba said, when I start to think I am right, the way I see things is right, my perception of everything is right. And then when I get caught up in that sort of thinking, I think things should happen the way I think. I become controlling. I'm controlling. And, sometimes I think all of us, we take on responsibility from, in the Brahman family with a lot of love. We really want to help Baba. It's true in my heart. But without realizing it, sometimes we become quite controlling, because that's what I interpret. Responsibility means I have to control. And yet we know that just doesn't work. And what is controlling behavior? Sometimes I get very upset. What do children do when they don't like something? They throw a tantrum, because if they don't get their way, they get very upset. And so sometimes when we're controlling, we can get very upset, or even we withdraw. Sometimes if we're doing a service program and someone doesn't like things, is not happy, and they withdraw, they say, I'm not going to be involved anymore, I'm pulling out. And we feel, oh no, poor thing. But actually it's an incredible strategy of control, because I want things my way, and if I don't have them my way, then I really withdraw. And so sometimes that sense that I am right, even dependence on praise, acknowledgement, and this sort of thing can be, a really strong dependence. Just only recently, someone mentioned to me that they said, no one appreciates what I do. And I said, Baba appreciates it. Baba appreciates it. Are you still doing it for a human being? But how deep is that sort of dependence on getting feedback? I mean, it's nice, it's a good thing, but if we don't get it, does it mean that do I always need to be sort of patted and mollycoddled? I don't know how people translate that word, but, like, I always have to sort of feel praise and this sort of thing. But one of the strong dependence I think we all have at the end of the cycle, dependent nature, in a subtle and refined form, is dependence on doing, on action. I'm one of those for sure. And it's not a bad thing, it's just the intent. Because before Gyan in body consciousness, we're empty. We're empty inside, so we do an action to get love, to get respect, to get, whatever, cooperation, to get money, whatever it is. And we've been programmed to sort of do actions to get results and outcomes in life. And when we don't get the outcome we want, which often happens, as we know, we feel disappointed, we feel upset, whatever. But Baba turns that whole thing upside down, because Baba says, children, first sit and be. Sit in the early morning hours and be pure. Be with Baba, be peaceful, be loving, be in that place. And then step into the life of action, and all my actions come from that place of love and purity and peace. And when I'm full and I do action, I'm not so attached to the outcome of the action. Because as we know, sometimes things work well and sometimes they don't. And I remember once I was in San Francisco. I don't know, is anyone from San Francisco here? Just a couple. And we had a program, I don't know whether you were there, at the League of Nations Square or wherever it is in the heart of San Francisco, something like that. And it was on International Day of Peace, which was September the 21st, I think, and they'd put 6 months of work into this. And the plan was around 5 p.m. all the people come out of the offices, and they were planning to have an event with theatre and singing and talks. I was to give a little talk on peace. And they were hoping to get 5,000 people. Well, it poured with rain. It was just drenching rain, like a monsoon. And so when I gave my talk, I had drips dripping from my nose, I was completely soaked, and there was 20 people there, and most of them were street people, had a few drinks. So I was giving my talk, and they were and when we went home, we were soaked. All of us were completely drenched, and we had a shower. And we laughed and laughed, and I thought, this is real success, that, they put their heart and soul into that event for such a long time, but the outcome was something we had no control over. And yet everyone seemed to be light and just, it's drama, right? That's what we all know, it's just drama. We just have to go with drama. But I think even in Brahman life, because of the whole old habit to do action, to get feelings, results, and a sense of fulfillment, we can sort of put that direction into service. Because why do we do that? Because I think yoga's not easy sometimes. And if I battle in yoga, I just find my mind wanders a lot. I don't really feel the depth of connection. And if I don't feel successful, subtly I go back to my old habit to get fulfillment through action rather than yoga. And it's such an easy thing to do. And yet I remember once Baba asked a question. He said, what is best, to be a Maharati of yoga or a Maharati of service? And what was the answer? Who believes Maharati of yoga? Who believes Maharati of service? Phew, you're right, yeah. It was both. Baba said both. So it's like, it's not that action's wrong, but when I fall into the old pattern, the old dependence to get my self-esteem through service, through results, through success, through praise, through acknowledgement, I'm sort of falling back into my old pattern within Brahman life. And yet Baba's way is to have that high stage, do action, and then be detached. Be detached and see what is the outcome of the action. And even, I think, dependence on service companions. And we let go the gross dependence on people, family members, whatever. But sometimes we sort of rebuild it very subtly within the Brahman family. And I remember once again in those renunciation maulis, Baba said that what often happens is that in the Brahman family, one gives support and another takes support. I give support and you take support, or you give support and I take support. And Baba said this, I've come to Baba to free myself from all bondages. But sometimes Baba said you don't realize actually you're increasing your bondage again. And Baba then went on to say that when, even within the Brahman family, I take a little bit of dependent support from someone, then Baba was saying, I can't really have the depth of my link with Baba. Because ultimately, true yoga, true link with Baba is when I really have one Baba in my heart. So many types of dependence. Even this morning in the blessing, I was thinking, we even become dependent on my reputation, my image, even within the Brahman family. So we become fear of disrespect. We fear that, or fear insult, fear criticism, whatever. It's just when you see all the layers that we've collected, and yet Baba wants us to let them go. And I really believe that this life is actually incredibly simple. Even though we've got all these layers, we don't have to think about each one, I don't feel. Really the most powerful point of spiritual knowledge is to have all relationships with one. That's what this life is ultimately about. I recognize Baba and I start to rebuild my whole sense of connection with one. And when I first met Baba, my first meeting was in the History Hall in Pandav Bhavan. And Baba spoke a Moli and I sat in front of Baba. He gave me drishti. And then Baba asked me two questions. I'd been, I think, about 1 to 3 months in Gyan, maybe about 3 months, something like that. And Baba's first thing he said to me was, do you have one Shiv Baba and none other? 3 months in Gyan. I went, yes. You can't say no to Baba. And then Baba said, are you stable on drama? And I went, yes. And I realize anyway, when Baba gives those blessings, he's not saying that you're this, it's what you have the potential. And those two things have really been with me my whole journey. But that first question, do you have one Shiv Baba and none other? And when I went back to London, we had a little music group in those days, and it was called Beyond Sound. I don't know whether anyone remembers it. The songs are still around, and there was a few brothers. I mean, I was a part of it, but I'm a terrible singer, but somehow I was a part of it. And anyway, Daddy Janki got us to sing that song, Mera to ek Shiv Baba dusra na koi. Mine is one Shiv Baba and none other. And once we were sitting with Daddy Prakashmani, and someone asked her, Daddy, why did Baba make you the main instrument? After Brahma Baba left, that incredible soul. And I've often thought, imagine the presence of a soul like Brahma Baba, incredible presence. Daddy was like mid-40s when she took over. It was an incredible change for the whole yagya. And she said, because right from the beginning I had one Baba and none other. And I think ultimately this sanskara of really realizing I've come to the end of the cycle, I want to let go, I want to become free, I want to really liberate myself. The seed is to have all relationships with one. The one who's incorporeal, egoless and viceless. And the more I do, that's almost automatically I move in that direction. And without overthinking or overanalyzing, a lot of my dependent nature starts to go back into the soul, only to re-emerge in the Copper Age next cycle. It's almost like I free myself. But on the other hand, if I love Baba, which we all do, I have faith in Baba, but I sustain dependent human relationships, even within the Brahmin family. Even if it's not a gross, but a bit of subtle dependence. I think what happens is that I give power back to my dependent nature. On the one hand, I remember Baba to become free, and then next minute I'm sort of taking a bit of support from somebody. So it gives strength back to my impurity, it gives strength to my old story. And that's sometimes why I think some of us feel, well, I've been a Brahmin for such a long time. I'm not really moving forward at the pace I would really like to. Because my observation of all the main instruments that seem to be really moving forward, one Baba is in the heart. And almost that love for one really begins to help free me from the network, the spider web of countless different sort of dependent natures which can sit inside the soul. And it's a process, of course it's a process, of course it's a lifelong learning, and yet I think that incredible feeling of lightness, you know, that lovely feeling when you feel light, uninhibited, nothing's holding me down, that sense of real freedom comes from when I break down the chains that I've collected throughout the cycle through really, really surrendering to one and really being with one. So, Om Shanti. I actually, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go back downstairs again. So what I might do is, well, what we might do is just have 5 minutes of meditation, if that's okay. And then unfortunately I will have to depart for going back down the mountain. So let's just sit and free ourselves with our connection with one. Thank you everyone. Om Shanti.
Why St. Francis walked those exhausted miles to Rome, and why people challenged his life of beautiful kindness, and why was Cedar abandoned at the border, her words not good enough, public honor more important than a life of loyalty. I waited for you, even though I didn't know your name. Down here in the Kumbh Mela, I could feel you were coming, riding through the rain, the thunderous rain. Forgiveness is the power in the soul revolution. It's stronger than pain, it's stronger than politics. Those in front, those behind, the quiet and the kind. Everyone will have a chance to feel it. Everyone will come to know. I waited for you, and now I know your name. Down here in the Kumbh Mela, I could feel you were coming to me, riding through the rain. I waited for you, and now I know your name. Riding through the sky so blue, the bluest sky forever. Navigated by my heart.